Hey, what's up everybody? Video 44 coming at you with another video. Alright, so I figured I'd just run my mouth on some NBA stuff. I don't really know where I'll go with this, but a lot of times I don't. Of course, you know the Lakers have agreed to JJ Redick being the coach over the next 4 years. No framework has been released. Added a few new names to the coaching staff conversation. Of course, we've already discussed JJ Redick in a previous video, but I've also understood that Sam Cassell could be added to the team. David Adelman. Not David, excuse me, I think it was David Adelman. Jared Dudley is also a name that I heard. A few others as well. So, yeah, man, could be a good coaching staff. Could be a good Scotty Brooks, maybe. Not really sure. It might not have been David Adelman. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But the other names, certain of, that are rumored to be kind of being courted, I guess you can say, for the Laker assistant coaching position. So, I'm excited about it. I think. You know, as long as we have the expertise in place to help him as a rookie coach kind of navigate through what's necessary. And I think we'll be in a good position to kind of have a coach that we can kind of see having some level of success as a rookie. So that's really what it's about, man, just arming JJ with everything necessary. And then from there, giving him the roster that can give him a fighting chance in the Western Conference, which is going to be tough given the fact that we only have 3 picks from which to trade. And I'm adamant about not trading all those picks, but I don't know what the Lakers will actually do in terms of improving this roster. So, you know, re-signing Max Christie is a big deal for my squad. I don't know if there will be a limit to how much emphasis they'll put on doing so, because obviously, if you're paying attention to his situation, he is a restricted free agent, so he could sign a contract with someone else, and depending on what it is, may determine how responsible it is to take on that particular commitment. So I think the Lakers will be wise to re-sign Max Christie if all things are equal, and if what I'm looking at is what will take place, then we'll probably look to possibly add his brother if we can get a second round pick. Maybe add you know, Cam Christie as well. That would be kind of cool, but I don't know if the Lakers will really be willing to buy further into the second round. But if they can, I think it would be a good thing for chemistry to bring his brother on, just like you want to bring Bronny James on. So Cam Christie's a nice shooter in the second round with a lot of upside, maybe even more upside than Max, to be honest with you. So I think that's an interesting piece that we can bring in for the betterment of our overall development. And whether we're going to rebuild or not, just giving us strong role players around LeBron James and Anthony Davis can kind of help us with whatever our path will be going forward. So that's the key, is to get inexpensive rookie contracts that can play and get better as they grow. And hopefully we can strike it rich with a few of these guys and retrade them for whatever will be necessary for our rebuild, which, as I've said many times, is imminent. So that's what the get down is in regards to my squad, the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, of course, we got other teams that we could be discussing as well. Looking into the draft, and we've talked a lot about how teams could be more or less trading picks and doing various different things to try to make themselves a little more set for what it is that they're trying to do. And I think with the picks that are in place for the start of this draft, you could totally see some room for movement to kind of make it so that teams get a little more of what it is that they would otherwise want, rather than just bringing on what's best for the value of the pick. Because once you bring that player to your situation, if you give them a lesser role, you may not be able to keep up that value. So that's part of the overall circumstance there. You just want to make sure that once you bring the guy to you, you're not diminishing him by giving him such a small role and letting him sit in that role for too long to where he becomes that player rather than what it is he was drafted to be developed to be. I've seen teams make that mistake a lot in this league. And guys never fully develop because of the roles. So that's part of the process there. Hopefully our team is on that path to bringing us what we need to put these players in positions to be able to elevate in value, rather than just bringing guys to you that have nice upside and then ask them to be on the back of your bench for the next 6 years. So that's kind of what it is. I see room for that to be a problem for a lot of these teams if they don't trade their pick or reach down for players that better fit their situation. And sometimes you'll say, well, we can just move our situation around and we don't have to draft for fit. Let's get the best player available and then work it out as we go along. And that might be the right way to go. We've seen situations in the past where teams drafted for fit and regretted it because they left some superstar on the board because they already had his position filled with a nice player. It's like you don't want to get too caught up in that because player movement is a real thing. And if you have a guy on contract for an absorbent amount of money, bringing in a rookie replacement for him can provide you some flexibility. Meaning, you draft a guy in his position and trade him away for something that you probably need a little more, or something that you can kind of better diversify into your portfolio. So that's really what I'm looking at there as a Laker fan, specifically. We have some guys on contract that we can move on from and bring ourselves some rookie contracts to fill that in, and then turn their $40 million contract into 220s that give us a fuller, better basketball team. So you want to be able to withstand injury and things like that. This is how you have to ultimately be thinking if you're running a franchise. So the teams that I'm looking at that have 2 picks could possibly move around. San Antonio could possibly move a little bit, although they don't have any pressing needs that would make it so that they have to move. I think they actually see a lot of good in this draft that they can get at 4 and 8 that can put them in a strong position to have exactly what they need. So I don't know if their picks are necessarily up for trade. I know there was rumor that they wanted a certain player that maybe they couldn't get outside of the top 2, but I don't think that the price tag on a top 3 pick is too early first round picks right now. I don't think so. 4 and 8 shouldn't net you 1, or rather vice versa. That's a little too much equity going out for the first overall pick, in my opinion. But there are other ways to make that work. Of course, you throw certain things in the trade to make it a bit more balanced. So, you know, I think that the idea is teams like Houston are expected to move their pick. Team like, who else did I hear about? There's a few other teams, but Houston, I think, is the main team that we're paying attention to right now. So keep our eyes open for them, because I don't think they really need another rookie contract because they have all their positions filled 2 and 3 times over for the most part. And so that's where it really gets tricky for a team like Houston. I personally think they should just go and triple down on wings, because you can play wings at different positions. So it's very easy for me to bring in a Juan Holland or Williams or Bruzelis and just play them at 3 different positions. You know what I mean? And with the guys that they have in place, they also can slide up and down the roster, and they can be so very versatile. So that's kind of what my vision would be if I kept the pick. But ultimately, I don't think that's what they're going to do. I think they either trade the pick or likely take Reed Shepherd, who you strangle-held to playing only really one position, and I think that's the 2. Although some people have said he's a 1. I don't know. I think the jury's probably out on whether or not you actually want him to play at the 1. So I think it can get real tricky when you start trying to figure out how to double down and triple down on one position. If you're going center, then you can only play one of them at once. If you're going point guard, you can only play one of them at once. Maybe you can slide them to the 2 if you're lucky. But if you get a small forward, a wing, you can play those dudes up and down the rotation all game long. Slide one out, slide another in. Guy gets in foul trouble or has a off game, you can put another one in, sit him tonight. It becomes a little redundant for the players themselves, but it's easier to find minutes for guys when they're all positionless. So that's really what my solution would be for the Houston Rockets if they were to try to keep that pick. So, yeah, man. Unrelated news. I'm walking past an Arby's that's been open for 50 years. After all this time, imagine that. Sunset in LA, man. You know I'm LA when I'm walking past Arby's on Sunset. Just wanted to throw that in there. Nothing to do with nothing, but that thing has been open all of my life. And finally closed this week. So that's kind of crazy. But anyway, so, you know, as I look around, I continue to just consider what it is we were talking about, which is trading picks and what teams would be interested in trading down and trading up. And you know, a lot of what I'm saying right now has already been said in previous videos. But at the same time, I think I've updated some of my intentions in regards to what these things would be. You know, I look at a team like the Phoenix Suns, and I still think they should be targeting a point guard. If I were them, if at all possible, which I don't know how it would be, but if at all possible, I'm trying to move up. Or maybe it makes more sense for them to move down, to be honest with you. When you think about taking a first-round pick and turning it into 2 seconds or 3 seconds, that might make sense for them in his 20-something range, whatever it is, 22 range. it might make sense for them to trade down if they can get multiple assets. Because a team like that, who doesn't have any picks in the future, the best thing for them to try to do is put themselves in a position to have that. You don't want to be a team that don't have no picks. And so if I have one first rounder right now, maybe I could turn it into a second and next year's first rounder or something, somehow, you know. I think that's kind of the equation to try to give yourself some future. So while they do have needs at the point guard position and maybe some desires to improve their center position, I almost believe they should be looking to make moves to try to get some future equity. And so I don't know if they're thinking that way, but it would be wise for them to consider that, turning the corner at some point. Because Bradley Beal is a player that they probably can't trade for plus value, especially with that no trade clause. And you want to keep Booker, and you want to keep Kevin Durant. So now you'll be looking at the rest of your asset class and realizing most of that stuff can't be traded for a whole lot. Maybe you take one of those players, add it to your first round pick, and move up or move down. But you're still in a space where you're not expected to get back great equity unless you make a trade for one of those two superstars that you don't want to move. So the Phoenix Suns situation, when they got the owner that they have who doesn't really value stuff like that, it's a problem where you can see where their future is going to be so bad in the future, where they have so little to work with going forward. And so for me, I'm just curious to see where that all pans out for the Phoenix Suns. Because while I do like the idea of them being a playoff team, I think they're capped out ultimately at what we just saw, which is them being exited into the first round. So a team like that, you can add a Bub Carrington or a Tyler Kolek. I don't know if he makes you marginally better, given the fact that you're not going to have him even in your starting lineup. And what they need is high-playing players that can be hot commodities right away. Players are going to be bodies that are ready to go right now. And I think they're likely to find that if they reach down, as to which for them they need to trade down and try to capture some of the value of that first-round pick. So I do think Tyler Kolek will be an excellent pick for them. I've been on record saying it'd be irresponsible for them not to take him. But in their range, he may still be on the board if they trade down. Or there are other point guards in that second round that are probably close to as productive as he may be. Maybe not the playmakers he is, but has some of the strengths that he may not. So they're good, solid point guards in the second round. And I don't think they have any second round picks this year. Just that one pick, if I'm not mistaken. So that's something that should be studied by their GM, James Johnson, and try to put themselves in the strongest position to have more assets rather than just bringing in one guy and that's the only pick they have till 2030, which is just utterly irresponsible of them to make that be the case. But whatever the case is, we'll see what they do. The Detroit Pistons is real interesting to me. They have the 5th overall pick. Obviously, they're the worst team. They just fired their coach. They got the new GM president in place, Trajan Langdon. I remember Trajan as a player. He was a really high-level college coach. Didn't quite make the impact he would like to in the NBA, but in college he was a rather successful name and a high-touted prospect the year that he was drafted. So, I know he has some cachet down there. One would expect he knows how to put together something solid, and they're being very aggressive, moving on from their coach. After signing him to a 10-year deal, it's $80 million. They traded him after, got rid of him after the first year. So I think that this is a team that's looking to be aggressive. And 5th overall pick ain't good enough for them. Now, to be honest with you, I think that there's a decent chance, as I'm paying attention to everything, that they get the 1st or 2nd overall value at 5, especially if Ricochet falls like people think he's going to fall. Now, I had Ricochet going in the first round. The first pick overall for the Atlanta. And some rumors are telling us that that is what they're going to do. But I think it's also a decent chance that Ricochet, if he isn't taken by Atlanta, gets passed on by Washington, gets passed on by Houston, and maybe even gets passed on by the San Antonio Spurs, to which they would get him. Now, I do think the Spurs or the Houston Rockets may take him. Like I said, if I'm Houston, I'm probably going to take a positionless player. But I don't know that Ricochet fits what Houston would ultimately do. I don't know if he's the best fit for them. Maybe they could use some shooting and some defense. But if I'm the Detroit Pistons, Ricochet is probably one of his best fits is Detroit. And so I don't know that they need to trade their pick to get him. I think it's a safe chance they need to trade their pick to get him, but maybe they don't, depending on how this draft board falls. So if you want to secure him, if you like him as much there as I do, maybe you do move up. But if you can't move up, I'm not sure you don't still get him. So I'm being completely honest with you. But this draft is all over the place, man. I don't know that the Detroit Pistons specifically should be overly married to Jaden Ivey at the 2. Definitely married to Cade Cunningham at the 1. You probably are not interested in moving Asar Thompson, even though his shooting issues could be a real thing. I do think he could develop into an Iguodala type of player. So I don't know if I'm necessarily going to move on from Asar Thompson if I'm the Detroit Pistons. But in the event that I have an opportunity to kind of move on from some of those other pieces, I might consider it or upgrade. I know a lot of people are high on Jalen Duren. 20 years of age, monster of a man. Been in the league now for a couple years, came in as an early rookie. So, you might draft a guy that's actually older than Duren at this point, even though Duren's been in the league for 3 years. So a lot of people are probably saying, we probably ain't going to take a Klingon. Probably just continue to develop Duren. But my thing with Duren is, I don't really know if he's happy in Detroit. I don't think that I can trust that he's going to stay healthy. If anything, I'm trusting that he's not going to stay healthy. Now, with young players, it's tricky because all they got to do is grow into their body, continue to hit the weight room, and all of a sudden a not so durable young player turns into a very durable vet. But he's had some real issues with knees and leg injuries and stuff like that. And I just have enough evidence to wonder if they're not in a good position to just kind of capture his value right now. 20-year-old center with a man's body, you may be able to get something very good in the market for this guy. And you draft his successor in the draft right now in Klingon, who I think most people would agree would be an upgrade. So I wonder about the Detroit Pistons taking Klingon and then moving on from Jalen Duren. Even though that might not be popular, I think when you have a team that did as poorly as they did last year, it might not be a bad idea to move on from just about damn near everybody. So only 2 players that I kind of have as untouchable on the Detroit Pistons are Asar Thompson and Cade Cunningham. That's it. Other than that, I don't think I have to keep Jaden Ivey. I don't have to keep Duren. Some of those other role players that they just picked up in trade, they're just that, role players, you know what I mean? So Detroit Pistons, I think they should be aggressive. I think Tracy Langland would like to bring in his own guys, people that he has a vision for. And he didn't bring any of the stuff that Detroit has to him. And it still may hold some value. I think a guy like Jalen Duren, he may be worth a first-round pick in this draft. He may be. So I don't know what team would be willing to do something like that, but I would shop him. Man. And if I'm wrong about Duren later on, so be it. I think the upside could be pretty substantial. Run, jump, dunk, but substantial in the sense that he's super athletic and has a hell of a frame. So you see a player there that can be really good. But I don't think he's ever going to develop a jump shot or a pull-up game or anything like that. He's not very skilled naturally. So I just, like I said, run, jump, dunk. And those guys are coming into the league all the time. So how much do I value Duren going forward? He's a hell of a rebounder. He definitely has some super strengths, but once I start realizing that he can't stretch the floor at all, and then I look at the rest of the issues that the Detroit Pistons have, I have to ask myself if holding on to him and Thompson as mainstays into my starting lineup isn't a mistake overall. And I think the answer is, I believe it is. I think you got to choose one. I don't think you can have Duren and Thompson both not being a threat from behind the arc at all. It's way too much pressure on guys like Cade Cunningham. And if they're going to draft Bruce Ellis, which it looks like they are, I don't trust Bruce Ellis to be able to have that type of gravity. People think he's going to turn into a shooter, but he had a bad shooting year last year. So if that's who you're drafting, you're just potentially going to have some bad spacing this season. So are they going to take another small guard like Reed Shepherd? And there's a concept I've been thinking about a lot in regards to players. Yes, do I think Reed Shepard's going to be a fantastic pro? I do. But if a good player goes to a wrong spot, it could be a bad situation. I don't think it's a perfect science to say, oh man, this player would have been the same guy if he were drafted to this team. Maybe not. And I don't know if Reed Shepard, as a small guard, is the greatest fit for Detroit when you have two guys in the starting lineup that are demanding of his spacing the floor. You know, he can shoot like crazy. He's a very efficient shooter. But do you really want him to continue to, and I say continue to because that was the issue they had in UConn, be so much relied upon to hit shots in the big league when he's a short guy? You know, the NCAA didn't have as many lengthy wing defenders as the NBA has. So a lot of what he was able to get away with, in theory, he may not be able to get away with his size and his length being as limited as it is. Regardless of how efficient of a shooter he is when he's not being guarded, it's when he is being guarded that I have questions about for the Detroit Pistons, who have non-floor spacers on the floor. So is Reed Shepard going to be the same Reed Shepard for the Detroit Pistons that maybe he would be in a different situation where they don't have those problems? I don't want to find out if I'm the Detroit Pistons. And I'm not reaching down for Dalton Knecht because I don't think Dalton Knecht should be taken at the 5 range. You probably trade down with a team like San Antonio and you get him at 8 or you get him at 9. So that's my question. Do you really reach down for Dalton Knecht because he's the better fit with your 5th overall pick, or do you move the pick, try to see if you can get Risa Shea, who provides you some spacing, at a taller, lengthier player that probably fits in better? But even if you bring yourself that fantastic shooter, you still have 2 non-shooters on the floor at all times. And until they figure that out or fix that problem or create so much more gravity with the other 3 players in the starting lineup, I think you're going to have problems. It's the same thing I said about Lakers and Vanderbilt and Anthony Davis. Even though LeBron James made himself a real shooter this year, shooting over 40%, that still wasn't enough space to really make those lineups make sense offensively. Because when you have 2 non-shooters on the floor, the defense gets to crowd those guys out. Now, there are other things to consider, including the strengths of the players. Good rebounding, good defense, rim protection. There's a lot of stuff that they do bring to the table. But what they don't kind of puts pressure on other players to be more efficient with more pressure defense. So do I go that route if I'm the Detroit Pistons? Or do I move on from one of those 2 non-shooters who are ultimately going to develop to be fantastic starters in this league? So I do think that if I had a choice, I'd take Ausar over Duren. And I do think the Detroit Pistons are going to find out that once it's time to pay those players, you're going to be really stuck paying non-shooters in a league that requires spacing. So I don't know about that, man. I think the Pistons will be wise to try to cash in on those players before they sign contracts so that you don't have them eating up so much of your cap space and creating a problem for your offense permanently and decreasing in value because of it. You see what I'm saying? You could probably get more for them on a rookie contract right now where everybody sees the upside and maybe can do more with the player. So once they get locked into Duren and Thompson, it's all over. They got non-shooters in the starting lineup, and that's it. So I don't think the solution is to simply bring shooters to the equation. I think you got to get one of them guys out of there. I really do. So that's what I'm telling you guys. I just feel like some people think that bringing more shooting to the situation is the solution, but I am a firm believer at this point that you can't have 2 non-floor spacers in your lineup. You can't do that. Not if they're going to be eating up most of your minutes. It's not best for you. Too much pressure is placed on other guys to really do something in that case. So that's what I want to say to you guys. If I'm the Detroit Pistons and I got a new GM, Trajan Langdon, I've really valued spacing a lot more than the previous brass did, and I'm going to shop Jalen Duren, man. I'm going to shop Jalen Duren. I'm going to move him for somebody who will likely create more space, or move him for equity that allows for me to have more trade possibilities in my future, and just live with whatever comes with that. No one's in the business of wanting to trade Jalen Duren in a nutshell. At 20 years old, I think that is absolutely insane in most situations. But at the end of the day, this is what what comes of drafting Thompson last year. Because Thompson's going to be a starter, in my opinion. Even if he's a high-level bench player, he's still going to be on the floor most of the time if you're doing things correctly. So that was why I thought that drafting Thompson was probably the wrong way to go last year. Now that you have him, you got to choose between him and Duren if the rule that I'm saying applies. So the mistake isn't necessarily feeling frustrated and then making a decision. It's that you created this problem in the first place. That was a mistake. And so I think that's why the last brass is gone, because as much as you like Thompson, he just probably should have never been drafted. But now I got to make a decision, and as I do, I think that Duren's the guy that I'm probably going to move on from now. And I can get myself a stretch 5 some other way. The team ain't winning any damn way, so it's not like this is going to affect winning. You're losing. That's the point. And spacing was the reason. So they got to fix that, and that's my solution, is to not only draft spacing creators, but get rid of the non-shooters. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say, man. I'll make more videos a little later. But I did want to come in here and just give you guys an update on my thoughts. And that's pretty much it right now. Video 44. Thank you all for watching. I'm out.